Imagine leaving your home tomorrow morning and deleting almost everything that makes travel possible. No car, no road, no phone, no map, no guarantee that the land ahead even has water. Now, bring your children, carry everything your family owns, and start walking. For most of human history, there was only one vehicle almost everyone possessed: their own 2 feet. You are a terrible sprinter compared with most large animals. A horse can leave you behind in seconds. But ancient travel was not a race decided in seconds, it was decided over days. Long legs turn every step into more distance. The arches in your feet compress and spring back. Your Achilles tendons store and release energy with every step. A ligament behind your neck stabilizes your head as the body moves. Millions of sweat glands release heat while you continue traveling under the sun. Walking upright also leaves both hands free to carry tools, food, water, or a child. That body helped humans spread from Africa into frozen Siberia, across the Americas, into Australia, and eventually onto islands surrounded by thousands of kilometers of ocean. Nobody walked from Africa to Australia in one lifetime. Human expansion was the longest relay race in history. One family followed animals into a new valley. Another moved when a lake dried up. Their children grew up there, and the next generation pushed a little farther. Moved the human frontier by only 1 kilometer a year. And after 1,000 years, it has moved 1,000 kilometers. Most individuals never crossed a continent, but humanity did, one ordinary journey at a time. At Laetoli in Tanzania, footprints were pressed into volcanic ash 3.66 million years ago. Hominins walked upright and left their journey frozen in stone. The prints are more than 3 million years older than our species, which appeared around 300,000 years ago. Long before boats or roads, our ancestors were already walking somewhere new. But strong legs are useless in the wrong direction. Ancient people had no paper maps, but the landscape itself was a map. Rivers, animal trails, greener plants, coastlines, stars, and seasonal winds gave direction. To an ancient traveler, empty land was covered in signs. And the most useful signpost was another human being. Trade, marriage, and gatherings moved volcanic glass, beads, warnings, and stories from camp to camp. They had no road signs, but they had something almost as valuable. They had other people. The world itself was changing too. Around 90,000 years ago, Homo sapiens lived beside freshwater in an Arabia far greener than the desert we know today. Around 60,000 to 70,000 years ago, a much larger expansion carried our species across Asia and beyond. During the ice ages, sea level fell by roughly 120 meters. Shallow seas vanished, and Beringia joined Siberia to Alaska as an enormous cold country. But the Ice Age did not drain every sea. Deep channels remained between Southeast Asia and Sahul, the lost continent joining Australia and New Guinea. To understand how humans first challenged them, we have to turn the clock much further back, to a time before Homo sapiens. On the Indonesian island of Flores, archaeologists found stone tools more than 1 million years old. Flores was surrounded by deep water. Even when the oceans were at their lowest, there was no land bridge. At least one deep water gap is commonly estimated at roughly 19 kilometers. And 1 million years ago, Homo sapiens did not exist. Some earlier kind of human, probably related to Homo erectus, reached the water's edge and somehow got to the other side. The first wheeled vehicles appeared only about 5,000 years ago. The Flores crossing had happened almost 1 million years earlier. We do not know what carried them. The first seagoing vehicle may not have looked like a boat at all. It could have been a fallen tree, a natural mat of vegetation, several bamboo poles tied together, or a rough platform pushed with branches. Maybe a storm swept a small group away by accident. Maybe they built something deliberately. The craft is gone. The rope is gone. The people who made it are gone. But the stone tools they left on the far side of the sea are still there. That is how we know the crossing happened. Flores held another clue. Around 700,000 years ago, small-bodied hominins were living there. One tiny adult arm bone is among the smallest ever found from a human relative. Isolated for generations, their descendants became smaller, eventually leading towards the mysterious Homo floresiensis, the so-called Hobbit of Flores. The crossing had created an entirely new human story. Wood, bamboo, reeds, and vines rot. Stone does not. This creates a huge blind spot in archaeology. The oldest surviving canoe is only about 10,000 years old, but humans had already crossed open water to reach Sahul tens of thousands of years before it was made. The absence of an ancient boat does not mean an age without boats. It means an age without surviving boats. Building something that floats did not require metal, nails, or a shipyard. Stone tools could cut wood, vines and roots could bind it. Bamboo floats naturally. One log rolls, but two tied together become more stable. Add cross pieces, a small platform, and a branch used as a paddle, and a pile of plants begins to behave like a vehicle. The materials and the basic physics were already there. By at least 50,000 years ago, and possibly closer to 65,000, Homo sapiens had reached Sahul, the enormous Ice Age landmass that joined what are now Australia, New Guinea, and Tasmania. Lower sea levels allowed them to walk across much of Southeast Asia, but not all the way there. Deep water gaps still remained. Some modeled crossings towards Sahul cover roughly 70 to 100 kilometers, potentially lasting many hours or more than a day in a basic craft. One castaway might reach a beach, but a castaway cannot populate a continent. A lasting population needs men and women, adults and children, different skills, food, water, tools, and enough people to build a future. Population studies point towards a stream of arrivals, probably through repeated crossings or several craft. Imagine the planning hidden inside that sentence. Water for the crossing. Food that would not spoil. Tools for the shore. Adults who could build shelter and find plants. Children who would grow up in a land their family had never seen. Reaching the beach was only the first problem. They also had to survive after arriving. Think about what that means. Tens of thousands of years before cities, metal tools, or written instructions, families stepped onto floating structures made from materials that would eventually vanish. Some islands were visible from high ground, others could be detected through birds, clouds, smoke, floating plants, or changes in the sea. They did not need to understand the entire ocean. They only needed enough knowledge and courage to reach the next piece of land. Human expansion continued on the other side of the world. Footprints at White Sands in New Mexico date to roughly 21,000 to 23,000 years ago. Adults and children were already walking through North America thousands of years earlier than older theories once allowed. Their tracks preserved another journey, after the travelers themselves disappeared. Thousands of years later, Pacific voyagers turned uncertain sea travel into one of the greatest navigation systems ever created. Austronesian-speaking communities moved through the islands of the Western Pacific, carrying pottery, tools, plants, animals, and entire families. They were not simply searching for islands, they were carrying the ingredients of an entire society. Between roughly 3,500 and 3,000 years ago, communities associated with the Lapita tradition expanded about 4,500 kilometers across the Western Pacific within only a few centuries. These were not empty-handed castaways drifting wherever the current decided. Their canoes carried people prepared to find land, settle it, and remain there. Later Polynesian navigators sailed enormous double-hulled canoes into the most remote ocean on Earth. They reached Hawaii, Rapa Nui, and Aotearoa, New Zealand without a magnetic compass or a printed chart. To an untrained person, the Pacific looks like endless identical water. To a skilled navigator, it was full of information. Stars rose and set at known points on the horizon. Winds changed with the season. Long ocean swells held their direction even when clouds covered the sky. Birds flew out to feed and returned towards land. An island might still be hidden below the horizon, but the cloud sitting above it was not. Lagoons, reefs, and vegetation could even change the color reflected beneath clouds. When the stars disappeared, an experienced navigator could feel the direction of the swells through the movement of the canoe. The Pacific was empty only to people who did not know how to read it. This knowledge was not written in a textbook. It was memorized, spoken, demonstrated, and passed from expert to apprentice. A map did not have to be drawn. It could be remembered, spoken, or sung. In 1976, the voyaging canoe Hōkūleʻa traveled from Hawaii to Tahiti without modern navigation instruments, guided by the Micronesian master navigator Mau Piailug. The journey covered roughly 2,400 miles and proved that the old system was not a legend. It worked. Later transport made journeys faster and heavier. People built sledges, worked with dogs, and used donkeys, camels, and horses. Then came wheeled vehicles and roads. But these inventions only accelerated a human movement that was already ancient. Today you can cross an ocean while eating dinner and complaining that the Wi-Fi is slow. Ancient travelers never saw a complete map of the planet, but they did not need to know where the human journey would end. They needed water for the next few days. knowledge of the next river, a memory of the stars, and someone willing to take the next step. Humans reached islands before farming. They crossed seas before cities. They populated continents before writing. Modern travel makes the world feel small. Their journey reveals how enormous it really is.